2.0 TFSI CDNC, CAEB, CHJA 211 horsepower, 2.0 TFSI CDNB 180 horsepower, 2.0 TFSI CDNA 177 horsepower. Many Audi Q5 buyers opted for gasoline engines. The power and efficiency of the base 2.0 TFSI engine satisfied literally everyone. However, it soon became clear that these engines of the ill-fated EA888 series, but already of the second generation, were burning oil in huge quantities. Roughly speaking, I had to lift the hood and unscrew the oil filler plug more often than open the gas tank flap. In this situation, those who bought the car new and had a warranty were lucky. Dealers changed piston rings and sometimes engines, but if the car arrived from abroad or the warranty was off, then you had to spend money from your wallet to replace piston rings and pistons. Today, there are no oil-guzzling 2.0 TFSI engines left in pre-restyling Audi Q5s. The problem has been successfully solved. There is no need to be afraid of Audi Q5 petrol crossovers, but you should make sure that the engine actually received an updated piston group. If suddenly the 2.0 TFSI consumes oil, then you need to install a new crankcase ventilation valve assembly and make sure that the turbine does not drive oil. You do save on oil, and during urban use change it less often than once every 7,500 kilometers, then the piston rings will almost certainly stick. But in this case, decarbonization can help. By the way, to control the oil level, you do not need to open the hood. There is no dipstick there at all, only a plug in the tube in front of the engine. The level is shown by an electronic probe, displaying data in the service menu of the onboard computer. In addition, don't forget about the timing chain. It still doesn't last longer than the timing belt. 120,000 kilometers is the limit for her. The tension of the timing chain can be assessed through the inspection window. There you will see the tensioner rod. The instructions instruct you to set the piston of the first cylinder to TDC in advance. If the rod extends to 8 grooves, if you count from the stopper spring, or 6, if from the edge of the guide body, then it's time to change the chain. Also, the condition of the chain can be indirectly assessed in diagnostic software by the deviation of the camshaft relative to the crankshaft. Also, when operating the 2.0 TFSI engine, you need to keep an eye on the modular pump, O6L121111H. It is plastic. The original will cost more than $300. There's even more information about everything else. But in general, if the pre-restyling Audi Q5 is not destroyed and well maintained, then even with a mileage of more than 300,000 kilometers it will not fall apart in the coming years. 2.0 TFSI CPMA, CHJA 210 horsepower, 2.0 TFSI CNCB 180 horsepower, 2.0 TFSI CPMB 220 horsepower, 2.0 TFSI CNCD 230 horsepower, 2.0 TFSI CNCE 230 horsepower. From the second half of 2011, the Audi Q5 received updated 2.0 TFSI engines. This is still the same EA888 series, but already the third generation. They have 4 injectors for direct injection and another 4 injectors for manifold injection. These engines have never used oil and are generally very successful. True, during the recall campaign, the manufacturer changed the front camshaft support, O6L103144H, because its design threatened the camshafts with scuffing and wear of the shafts themselves. The oil separator assembly should also be installed with the latest revision, O6K103495BL. The timing chain of 2.0 TFSI petrol turbo 4s lasts a little longer, up to 140,000 kilometers. The status is checked in the same way. The pump is the same, separate and plastic. These engines have almost no other expensive problems. 3.2 FSI V6 CALB 270 horsepower. Until September 2012, the Audi Q5 was equipped with a 3.2-liter V6 petrol engine. This is a great, reliable, and unpretentious motor. The timing chains on it will have to be changed every 200,000 kilometers. Everything else is trifles. 3.0 TFSI V6 CHJA, CTVA 272 horsepower. 3.0 TFSI V6 CTUD, CTXA 353 horsepower. Since mid-2012, the most powerful engine for the first-generation Audi Q5 has been the new V6, with direct injection and a Roots-type supercharger compressor. These engines are based on the old 3.2-liter engine. As usually happens, the new engine is less reliable. There are known cases of scuffing in the cylinders. This happened both due to the destruction of the catalyst and due to piling up on a completely cold engine. And yes, it is also better to change the oil in these engines every 7,500 kilometers. And besides, 200,000 kilometers will have to replace the timing chains. 2.0 TDI CJCA 143 horsepower, 2.0 TDI CGLA, CGLD, CAHB 163 horsepower, 2.0 TDI CGLA, CMGA, CAHB 170 horsepower, 2.0 TDI CGLC 177 horsepower. Audi Q5 with diesel engines mainly came from Europe, with considerable mileage. Nothing wrong with that. However, in the first few years, the EA 189 family 2-liter TDI suffered from oil pump shutdown with mileages exceeding 100,000 kilometers. The rotation of the pump built into the balancer module stopped after wear of the hexagonal shaft connecting the gear to the pump rotor. Badge engineers solved this problem in October 2009. These diesel engines no longer have any obvious or systemic problems. 2.0 TDI CSUB 136 horsepower, 2.0 TDI CJUA 150 horsepower, 2.0 TDI CNHC 163 horsepower, 2.0 TDI CNHA 190 horsepower. Since the spring of 2014, the Audi Q5 received new 2.0 TDI engines. The essence is the same: cast iron block, common rail, timing belt drive, and even more environmental systems. It has no obvious mechanical problems. 3.0 TDI CCWB 211 horsepower, 3.0 TDI CPNB 239 horsepower, 3.0 TDI CCWA, CPNB, TUD 245 horsepower, 3.0 TDI CTBC 258 horsepower, 3.0 TDI CTBA 258 horsepower, 3.0 TDI CAHB, CGQB 313 horsepower, 3.0 TDI CAHB 326 horsepower, 3.0 TDI DEHA 340 horsepower. Gourmets choose the Audi Q5 with a 3-liter turbo diesel. All these motors belong to the EA 897 series. Cast iron cylinder block, common rail, timing chain drive on the flywheel side. Chains last 300,000 kilometers or more. There are unruly swirl flaps in the intake manifold, the drive rod of which flies off and asks to be replaced with a more reliable one. Most of all, such engines do not like driving with a minimum amount of fuel in the tank. The Bosch injection pump was changed during the recall campaign, but still, if you let it work with air bubbles for at least a couple of moments, it will slowly begin to chip away. Piezo injectors will not be happy about this. You will have to change literally everything, even the fuel tank, if you really want to get rid of the chips in it. By and large, today the Audi Q5 does not have bad or unsuccessful engines. 0B2, 6-street manual transmission, Audi Q5 can be found with 6-speed mechanics, but these are very rare specimens. There are no questions about manual transmission. ZF 6 horsepower -28, 0B6, 6-street automatic transmission. The Q7 has many automatic transmission options. Let's say right away that on pre-restyling cars you can only find classic hydromechanics on the version with a 3.2 V6 engine, and only if the car was imported from the USA. She has 6 degrees. Automatic ZF 6 horsepower -28. E. DL 501, 0B5, 7-street pre-select checkpoint. Most Audi Q5s were equipped with a proprietary S-tronic pre-selective transmission. The gearbox is called DL 501, it has a wet clutch and, believe it or not, quite good reliability. Yes, the mechatronic unit went through several revisions, and in general, during the warranty period, S-tronic was thoroughly shaken up and all its weak points were replaced. As a result, this transmission has gained a good reputation. It lasts about 300,000 kilometers without problems. Because it is based on a design similar to a conventional manual transmission, then during a major overhaul it is enough to change the mechatronics repair kit. 0B5398048C, which today costs $600. The clutch, 0B5141030E, for $1,700. And the ejection pump, 0B5301515H, for $130. If the clutch cover bearing and the clutch itself are worn out, then you need to add another $240. In order for the S-tronic to run happily ever after, you need to update its oil every 60,000 kilometers or more often if the car is used intensively. By the way, if you avoid inadequate annealing, then when updating the clutch you can save a lot by changing only the clutches in it. This is possible if the steel discs are not worn out. Additionally, we note that for wet DSGs the clutch is a clutch pack. This is exactly what we are talking about. ZF8HP55, 0BK, 0BW, 8-street automatic transmission. Since 2011, Audi began to abandon its native S-tronic. It was left only to 2-liter turbodiesels. Other versions, including 2-liter turbo petrol, received 8-speed. Automatic machine of classical design. This is the brainchild of ZF. This transmission immediately turned out to be usable and complete, not requiring early repairs or replacements. It is believed that Q5 with 8-street automatic transmission is the best choice. Although the unkilled S-Tronic is not much inferior to it in terms of reliability, the oil and filter in the torque converter automatic transmission also need to be changed every 60,000 kilometers. When viewed from a lower angle, the Audi Q5 seems very reliable, and this impression is not deceptive. Quattro all-wheel drive is virtually unkillable. This is an advantageous difference between Audi crossovers and their classmates BMW and Mercedes, where all-wheel drive requires attention at least once every couple of years. Audi transmissions are special. The drive to the front axle and the front gearbox are built directly into their housing. The oils in them are different. When replacing the same S-Tronic and automatic transmission, about 7 liters of oil, GO5252902, or 5 liters of ATF, S6710903112, are placed. Another 4.5 liters of oil, GO55532A2, goes to the front gearbox. Original oils cost $30 to $40 per liter. The front suspension is very reliable. Replacement of silent blocks occurred at runs of more than 150,000 kilometers. As a rule, the silent blocks of the upper control arms had to be replaced first. They are the smallest, 8R04075515, costing $22 original. Absolutely all lower control arm silent blocks are also sold separately in the original. Hefty silent blocks, 8K040783F, of the lower rear control arms will cost $70. A pair of silent blocks of the lower control arm, 8K040718-2B and 8K040718-2B, cost $25 to $30. One of the 4 ball joints, namely the lower front one, is also sold and replaced separately. It will cost $130. 8K040769G. The front suspension of the Audi Q5 is very repairable. Original consumables are sold separately and cost a reasonable amount of money. True, if it comes to removing the front control arms, the bolt securing their ball joints to the steering knuckle cannot be removed. Usually its nut can be unscrewed without any problems, but the head of the bolt, when trying to turn it, simply comes off. In fact, it's for the better. There is a life hack. The rod remaining on top of the steering knuckle mount can be pulled out by screwing a nut onto its thread. Of course, it is better to use an extended nut, and then, when the thread ends when pulling out, you need to place a thicker nut or any other spacer between it and the fist. It is not necessary to saw your fist or mutilate it in any other way. By the way, if you fly into a hole or a curb, the steering knuckles of the front wheels may crack. Small cracks in them near the ball joints are not that uncommon. It's better to buy a replacement fist. A used one will do, but a new 8K040725 AB original one will cost $450. By the way, there are many substitutes. The rear suspension is super durable. When the mileage exceeds 250,000 kilometers, it is time to update the silent blocks of the lower H-shaped arms, 8R050531-2B. They are not sold in the original. There is literally one substitute and polyurethane analogs for $5 to $8 apiece. Lifetime of original wheel bearings, 4H04986225A. On some Audi Q5s they began to hum after a mileage of about 100,000 kilometers, on others they normally last more than 200,000 kilometers. Original front wheel bearings will cost $250. Inadequate operation and torn boots lead to wear of the internal CV joints. They and tripods are sold separately. The original ones, 8K0498-103BV, cost $1,000, so it's better to lubricate them and change their boots on time. As a rule, the Audi Q5 from the bottom looks good and fresh for a long time, with the exception of the muffler coupling in front of the rear section. The coupling in both of its clamps rust to the point of destruction. This not the most serious breakdown can be heard from the resulting loud growl of the exhaust. The body of the Audi Q5 is excellent, but there are obvious weak points. Let's start with the fact that the paint chips off very easily from the edges of the arches, especially the rear arches. To protect the edges, plastic covers have been proposed. For the front fender arches, trims, AR08537174U8, are available that cover their entire circumference. There are no such protections for the rear wings. Sometimes owners install shields in the rear wheel arches that cover the edges of the rear bumper, AR08538288C4U8. Please note that these are special thin flares and not arch extensions from the off-road package. In addition, you can protect the edges of the arches with film. The paint is also peeling off from the edges of the Audi Q5 doors. Here it is rubbed off by sand. The edge is strongly protected with the original rubber pad, 4L08533133, or armored film. You can also stick original protective strips, 8R08399981C and 8R08399982C, on the inside of the doors near the edges. At high mileage, the paint begins to fall off the wings at the points of contact with the bumpers. Over time, the exposed metal visibly rusts. In general, many Audi Q5s that drive on roads with a lot of sand, moisture and chemicals will have to repaint the front fenders, rear doors and fenders. Owners of the Audi Q5 have learned from their own experience that if you open the trunk door during rain, water will flow from it onto the trunk shelf. This problem was eliminated on restyled cars. Shields were added, AR0827555601C and AR0827555001C. They can be installed on pre-restyling Q5s. They are installed in the corners of the rear door from the inside, on the sides of its hinges. Water slowly enters the rear wiper gear housing, which leads to corrosion of the gears and connecting rods of the gearbox. Before the gearbox jams and wears out the teeth on the plastic gear, it is worth disassembling it, cleaning it from rust and lubricating it. Audi Q5 headlights on literally all cars began to fog up after 3 to 5 years of operation. As it turned out, in the cold the plastic of the case becomes brittle and cracks. Moreover, cracks appear literally without contact. Due to shaking and vibration when driving over potholes, cracks appear at the top near the headlight mounts. They are super thin, but water penetrates through them. Fogging of the headlights should never be ignored. All the electronics inside will die. The reflectors and high beam curtains will rust. When the Audi Q5 was young, the LEDs burned out, causing the entire garland of daytime running lights to go out. Sometimes the LED control unit failed. On many Audi Q5s, the steering shaft driveshaft begins to bite and creak. Plus, there is a backlash in it. The original steering shaft, 8R1419753F, costs over $500. But there are plenty of substitutes on sale. The entire intermediate steering shaft with crosspieces can be bought for $130. You can repair the shaft even cheaper by purchasing crosspieces separately. They can be replaced. The power steering pump in the Audi Q5 is rather weak. It had to be replaced by dealers under warranty. The hum and heaviness of rotation indicate that it has exhausted its resource. Although, after replacement, the pump lasts quite a long time. The original AR014515-3D pump will cost $1,000. The cost of replacements reaches $500. It's probably worth investing in replacing the power steering fluid every 2 years. By the way, this applies to pre-restyling cars. The restyled Q5 has an electric steering rack. The Audi Q5 can be diagnosed in literally all respects. Conclusions about the condition of the engine and transmission can be made simply by reading the errors and actual parameters of these units. Therefore, we advise you to contact specialized specialists who specialize in cars of this brand.